Right now, as you read this, your brain is doing something it never stops doing. It is generating thoughts, thousands of them. And most of those thoughts feel random, automatic, like background noise you never asked for. But here's what psychology and neuroscience have been quietly proving for decades. Those thoughts are not neutral. They are instructions. And your life, your choices, your relationships, your ceiling are being built from them, whether you're paying attention or not. Let's start with something most people don't realize. You are not your thoughts, but your life is being shaped by which thoughts you believe. Psychologists call this cognitive fusion, the process by which we merge with our thoughts so completely that we stop questioning whether they're actually true. When a thought says you're not ready, you don't examine it, you feel it. When a thought says this always happens to you, you don't interrogate the word always, you nod. And then you act accordingly. The thought becomes a script. The script becomes a decision. The decision becomes a pattern. And the pattern becomes your life. Here's where it gets deeper. Your brain has a system called the Reticular Activating System. Think of it as a filter. Out of the millions of pieces of information your brain receives every second, the RAS decides what rises to your conscious attention and what gets filtered out. And here's the critical part. The RAS is tuned by what you think about most. If you spend most of your mental energy thinking about everything that could go wrong, your brain literally learns to notice threats first. It becomes wired for danger. Not because the world is more dangerous, but because your filter is set that way. You start finding evidence for whatever you already believe. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. Your thoughts don't just react to reality, they actively participate in selecting which reality you see. Now here's something that sounds almost too simple to be true, but has decades of research behind it. The way you think about yourself determines how others experience you. Not because of magic, because of neuroscience. When you carry a belief that you are capable, your posture changes, your tone changes, your willingness to take up space changes. People respond to those signals. When you carry a belief that you are a burden, the same mechanism runs in reverse. You shrink before anyone asks you to. You apologize before anyone is offended. The internal script becomes the external performance, and the external performance becomes what people respond to. This is why two people can walk into the same room with the same credentials and have completely different outcomes. But let's be honest about something important. Knowing this is uncomfortable, because it means that some of the limitations you've been carrying aren't just things that happen to you. Some of them are things you've been reinforcing quietly, every day, in the privacy of your own mind. That's not an accusation. It's actually the most hopeful thing about all of this. Because what the mind has built, the mind can rebuild. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to form new pathways throughout your entire life. Every time you choose a different thought, a more useful thought, a truer thought, you are literally laying down new neural architecture. Not instantly, not dramatically, but incrementally, the way any real change actually happens. The research on cognitive behavioral therapy, on mindfulness, on directed self-talk, all points to the same conclusion. Repetition rewires. You don't have to feel the new thought to think it. You don't have to believe it completely to practice it. You just have to introduce it often enough that the brain begins to treat it as familiar. Familiar becomes default. Default becomes identity. This is what separates people who feel stuck from people who don't. It's rarely resources. It's rarely talent. It is almost always the habitual story running in the background. The voice that says, I'm the kind of person who doesn't finish things. I'm the kind of person who never quite gets there. The voice that sounds like self-awareness, but is actually just a very old, very practiced thought pattern that got confused with truth somewhere along the way. So what do you actually do with this? You start by noticing, not judging, noticing. When a thought arrives that limits you, you don't have to fight it. You just get curious about it. Where did this come from? Is this actually true? Is this the version of me thinking? Or is this an echo of something I was taught to believe? That pause, that tiny gap between stimulus and response, is where everything changes. Viktor Frankl wrote about it from inside a concentration camp. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. He found it in the worst conditions imaginable. The space exists for you too. Your thoughts, right now, are not fixed facts. They are proposals, and you are allowed to reject them. You are allowed to choose a different one, not by pretending the hard thing isn't hard, not by forcing optimism that doesn't feel honest, but by asking consistently, is there a truer thought available to me right now? One that doesn't collapse under examination. That practice, done daily, done imperfectly, done anyway, is the architecture of a different life. If this felt like something you've known but never quite had words for, subscribe, because this channel exists to give language to the things that have always been true about how you work. And if you want to understand why your brain gets louder at night, The Psychology of People Who Can't Stop Overthinking Before Bed explains exactly what's happening and why it's more than just stress. Click it. You'll understand yourself a little better by the end.